Comparison price for Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025. I hope everybody had a splendid Canada Day. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the Historic Wall Center in the show or presentation of Bet365. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, Mike Rogerson and his 4 Junos, hitting switches and conducting things. He's about to add a 5th Juno after Blake and I got into a little sing-along here this morning.
A little bit of humming.
Yeah, I'm not sure he could arrange, mix, edit.
Oh, I think he's that good.
I don't think he's got
we got a chance.
A prayer.
We'll submit for your considerations.
Yeah, absolutely. The Whistler Golf Club poll question today: are the Canucks back to everything has to go right to be a playoff team? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. What says you?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I don't think it's a super critical statement or a you shouldn't be flabbergasted to read that. I mean, think about 2 years ago when that was said by Jim Rutherford 2 years ago. Was anybody up in arms? Like, that seemed like just a realistic assessment of the team that he had in front of him. And it's a slightly different team now with JT Miller gone, obviously, but a better looking blue line certainly, and by far better goaltending depth. So I think the same thing. If they are average to above average in terms of man games lost, yeah, I think they make the playoffs for sure.
They missed the playoffs by 6 points, 3 wins, had 2 teams to jump, Calgary and St. Louis. Everything is a little too absolute for me. So I voted no. I voted no. Now, most things, yes, most things have to go right, particularly at center ice. You need your number 1 centerman to bounce back, Liz Pettersson. You need your number 2 centerman, Philip Chytil, to stay healthy. And you need your number 3 or 4 centerman, Aatu Räty, to take the next step in his career and be a bona fide every night NHL player. Health and all that. I look at them. I look at the rest of the West here and dust hasn't totally settled on July 1st. There's still some decent players out there, some players who could affect things a little bit. Like, if Utah were to get Nikolai Ehlers, I think that would, needless to say, improve their chances. They finished behind the Canucks last year. We'll see if Anaheim is done or if they've got more to come. But I do see a route to and remember, we're just talking playoffs here, right?
Yeah.
Like, if the question was, can the Canucks go on a playoff run? Yeah, everything has to go right. But to get into the playoffs, to be one of the wild cards, or even dare to dream the 3 seed in the Pacific, no, I think most things have to go right. I could see a team that, with that terrific defensive structure and posture that Rick Tocchet was able to bring in, continuing with Adam Foote, getting the fantastic goaltending from that tandem of Demko and Lankinen, and then scoring just enough to be a playoff team. Yeah, I can see that pathway.
I went back just to see 23-24, as you said, most things, and I was going to say, well, it wasn't absolute in 23-24 either, but it was damn close. Oh my God, the health of,
oh my goodness. I mean,
okay,
it was ridiculous how healthy they were.
These are the players that played 80 games minimum: Miller, Hughes, Pettersson, Boeser, Roenick, Garland, Höglander.
Yeah,
80 games, not 76, which is still a fully healthy season to me.
Yeah.
80 games, 51 games played for Thatcher Demko. I mean, if you really wanted to quibble, because remember, you got career years at a Höglander and Joshua that year as well. Joshua did miss some time, so his career year could have even been better.
He missed 20 games.
And then Ilya Mikheyev did not have a bounce-back season. Like, Ilya Mikheyev was 31 points. He was healthy, but he was nothing. So that was the only thing that you're paying that guy $4.5 million. You wanted more out of him there. You have to really quibble with anything else that you see there. So it was pretty much everything.
Our friends of the Whistler Golf Club taking your bookings for any time during the 2025 season, and the prime time's filling up fast. So get there, get your times reserved, and check out Palmer's Gallery Bar and Grill, the beautiful restaurant patio overlooking the 18th green there, home of Whistler's Best Burger, plus local beer, awesome beer. If you have a group of 12 or more, tell them about your group, whistlergolf.com/groups. Our top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Brock talks. Didn't think a return would happen, but an 11th hour, or actually a post-noon hour offer, Eastern time, sealed the deal. We heard from Mr. Boeser this morning before he takes off on a holiday here, and oh my God, just broad strokes. Did the guy ever sound relieved? Like, think of what we heard from Brock towards the end of the year. And, everybody told us he's a feeler and he's a friend of everybody in the room. So what went on last year with Miller and Pettersson was not easy. On number 6 for the Vancouver Canucks, when we heard from him, especially late in the year, it was... he was almost cringing through his teeth about everything that was happened, trying not to say the wrong thing, and yet still letting his displeasure, his angst, his everything with that Canucks dressing room and that season show in his comments. Today you had Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. He was absolutely on a high, you could tell.
He wasn't getting a send-off in any way by the Vancouver Canucks at the end of the season. So I think that added to his what the hell is going on here sort of mentality. And his brain, I don't think, was catching up to the fact that I'm not wearing this crest ever again. Like that. Like, I don't think.
Well, he does reference in these comments everything that went on last year. And of course, that included the general manager downplaying his value on the trade market.
Yeah.
So, and let's remember a couple of years ago, he wanted out. They were looking to trade him, couldn't move the contract. So
he and Garland, and now both of them.
No, I know. As much as as much as Brock and the Boeser family have gone through their travails since he debuted here with the Canucks as a rookie, Brock Boeser, the hockey player, has gone through a lot with the Vancouver Canucks organization, independent of any kind of off-ice considerations. Let's hear from Brock, who said deep down he was always a Vancouver Canuck.
It was hard. I think, I really mentally try to throw scenarios in my head on, different teams I could possibly see myself being on and try to envision it. But, that can only get you so far. And just thinking about it, I just felt like, in my stomach, I still had a weird feeling about everything. And, when they called back, I kind of lit up, just even after everything that's happened, I still kind of had that feeling in my stomach. And, I just listened to it and, it felt right when they started talking and trying to figure out a deal. I just started getting excited and, I just knew it was meant to be.
He just couldn't quit us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And Alvin yesterday said, what change matters. And one of the things that Patrick noted was, July 1st comes around, shit gets real. Then all of a sudden you're thinking about uprooting what you've got here and moving to a different place. And how am I going to integrate with the new coach and new teammates, new city? As we've noted, he's dating a Vancouver girl. He had his Canucks teammates and great friends, telling him, we'd love to keep you.
Even for guys making $7 million a year, moving sucks.
Yeah.
Like, it really does. Changing everything that you know in your everyday life, it sucks. And not changing all that was worth something for Brock Boeser.
Just simple things like, where am I going to get my hair cut? Can I trust my new mechanic? All those things.
Bank accounts, driver's license, all that.
And he admitted, Brock, he felt the door was shut and his head was spinning when the offers started coming in.
I mean, I think there's a few times that, we talked with the Canucks and the door was still open there. And, it felt like the door shut a couple times there. So I really, had to wrap my head around moving on and just, and then obviously trying to get a sense in my head, what might be a good fit and all that. So there's so many things going through my head. And that's why I said my head was spinning a lot. And it was hard to kind of grasp. And, that phone call kind of came out of nowhere. So it was definitely, a shock to me. But, the way I felt when that phone call came is like, I told my agent, I was like, get a deal done. And, we made something work. I didn't even know if Patrick was calling to get a deal done. He was just calling Hank, and I was just assuming that was it. So, I'm really happy that he did.
A couple of times the door was shut. How about that?
Yeah, it felt
How
like that.
How often does the door reopen a third time?
But it felt like that to us on the outside. You're never really sure if you're reading the situation right. It seems like we read the situation exactly right. Like it was dead on the vine.
And also that phone call from Alvin could have easily been, Brock, thank you for your terms of service here. No hard feeling. Wish you the best. And all of a sudden it's, hey, how does 7 at 7 1/4 sound?
And it was mutual, right? Patrick Alvin looked at the tea leaves there on the offseason and was like, holy crap, we can't replace the goals.
Well, look, let's make no mistake about this. That Brock Boeser re-signing saved Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin. If you strike out on your centers,
if you had pissed him off to the point where he's like, I'm not signing,
and then you lose one of the best free agents out there, one of the few goal-scoring free agents out there, while being woefully short offensively to begin with, our feedback channels are absolutely stuffed with fire Alvin, Rutherford retire, I've had enough of these guys, move on. So this contract, well, it's going to make Brock Boeser a very rich man. I think buy some time for Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin with a fan base that is getting a little impatient and a little angsty about the totality of their work over 3 years.
That doesn't absolve
as we discussed yesterday. Even with the Boeser re-signing, I'm not sure the Vancouver Canucks have improved. Subtracting Suter, adding Evander Kane, it's not yet improved. You may get improvement from within, but on paper and addition-wise, you haven't exactly achieved what you set out to do. I mean, this was plan B, plan C yesterday. It was hardly plan A.
Well, and I don't know that anybody would have guessed that, hey, what's the solution to that toxic Vancouver Canucks season? Bring everybody back. And now, obviously, JT Miller is not back, and that was the key cog there. But I still don't know that I think people were thinking, okay, this team needs change. And that didn't happen. And there's a good reason why. This offseason market was not an offseason market where change was easily facilitated in a way that would keep you reasonably competitive. But the Canucks have risk here. It sounds like the room's in good place. I'll get to that in a second. But in terms of just the on-ice skill, like there's some risk here. Like there's certainly in the long term on the Brock Boeser deal and the Connor Garland deal. But, while they had good seasons last year, it's not like they were all world seasons. No. And getting 25 goals this coming season from Brock Boeser is better than getting 0 goals from Brock Boeser, which was what they were staring at. But there is still some risk here in trying to run it back and expecting sort of different results, right? So we'll see. Now, I will say this. The hints that we are getting from the Garland and the Boeser media availabilities, it sounds like a room that never got itself back in order at post-JT Miller trade because I think the embers were still just burning. Like it was just too hot still in the wake of it. But I get the feeling that it will be a very different vibe come training camp, that I think everybody has officially turned pages here. And there's going to be an arrival there where...
Have to. Yeah, even the JT Miller loyalists in that room.
Right. I think the page has been turned there, though.
Well, I sure hope Evander Kane isn't the fuse that relights that.
If Evander Kane has any ability to read the room, I think he knows.
I think so.
I think he knows.
And as we've talked about, Evander has a lot at stake. He's playing for a final NHL contract here. It's been a number of teams now. I think he knows It's time to put his best foot forward on and off the ice. We've talked about it. It's a special relationship between this player and the city of Vancouver. He was drafted here. He had that incredible debut in his first NHL game in his home state, where his mom and dad read the lineup out to the dressing room. It seemed like he immediately ingratiated himself with the Canucks veteran core at the time, grew with the young players who would follow in his midst, Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, Thatcher Demko, and others, and got the love and support of one of the world's biggest and best hockey fan bases as his father battled cancer and ultimately passed away. Here's Brock on the bond that he has with this city and Canucks fans.
Yeah, it means a lot. Like I've said so many times, they've been so supportive of me, not just with hockey, but, away from the rink. And that means the world to me. And, everyone's so kind outside when you're just out and about and people say hi. Everyone's so kind and respectful. And, that means a lot to me. And I've said it many times, Vancouver feels like my second home. And, it's just so comfortable. And I love it there. So maybe I can get a house there now.
I think you can, Brock. It's a crazy market, but even you can now afford a house.
Grant's had a good tweet on this. Signs fourth contract, can finally afford to buy a house in Vancouver.
Yes. Yeah. Says it all.
Look, and here's the other thing, and he touched on it inside that answer. Roberto Luongo once said this as well. For as passionate, hyper, in some cases critical market this is, I have not ever heard a single story from a Canucks player or coach or manager, for that matter, have somebody come up to them in town and express the negative or the dark side that you might see on social media about the Canucks, their players or officials. Brock said it there. Everyone is so nice and respectful when they come up in person. Because most people, when they see an NHL star on the street, do not have the gumption to go up and start criticizing or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Now, as you go about your day, maybe you stop in the same coffee shop every morning on your way to the rink, you might hear, hey, what happened last night? Or we go, oh, would have liked to have seen a score on that breakaway, whatever the case may be. That's really tame stuff.
Yeah.
That is stuff that most
it's anonymous social media
NHL
trolls that have the balls.
You have to go out looking for the dark side. Mm-hmm. Occasionally it manifests in the rink with booze if the team isn't playing well. Well, guess what? That's part and parcel of the compact you make as a pro athlete and professional hockey team. Yeah. This is a market that understands good hockey, bad hockey, that understands 100% effort and something short of. And at the arena where they're paying top dollar for tickets, they absolutely have that right. But I sometimes, it rears its head on July 1st and in the days and hours leading up to July 1st, where people, and particularly people out of market, who want to turn this place into a boogeyman. I'm like, are you fucking, look around. Look around. It is, you've made this point millions of times too, Blake. In comparison to, say, New York with the Yankees, where the standard is why aren't you winning 70% of your games, World Series or bust, or English soccer or some of the European soccer leagues? It is really tame stuff. So fantastic to see and hear Brock. And like I said, that was perhaps Brock at his most. I can't remember the last time Brock was himself like that, and light and airy and smiling and happy and laughing and joking and all the things that were hard to come by this past season.
And he's got trade protection now too. That he said is calming his nerves even more. So I think
that was hard on him too.
I don't know that any of this leads to a 35-goal season, but would I be surprised if this leads to a 35-goal season? No, not necessarily.
Well, let's face it, getting back to the great J-Pack question, is this the year you throw? I think he has to be a 30-goal scorer, Blake.
Well,
Like
that's what he's being paid for.
When I looked through the Vancouver Canucks lineup, and yes, guys like Joshua and Höglander can go a long way towards helping their offensive problems by bouncing back with, even if it's not the career seasons you're talking about 2 years ago, something close to that.
Mm-hmm.
But it is hard to envision a Vancouver Canucks team that is going to score enough goals this year to be a playoff team unless Brock is a 30-plus goal scorer.
Yep.
Because you look at teams that miss the playoffs, and go down the list of goal scorers there, and they are typically have high goal scorers in the 20s or low 30s, right? Look at teams that make the playoffs that tend to have a few guys who are in the 30s, maybe even 40, 50.
Pettersson and Boeser both need to score 30 goals this year. Both of them.
Got my Yellow Dog shirt on. Manifesting.
Are you chasing your tail? Sometimes.
One could argue the Canucks are with the moves.
Running it back, yes. Chase My Tail Pale Ale 4-packs, tall cans on special for the month of July. Look for it on sale at private and government liquor stores. It is the gold standard from Yellow Dog. Chase My Tail Pale Ale.
All right, more to get to. Connor Garland, he meets the media as well. He signs a $6 million extension. Of course, that will only kick in next season. He'll play on the existing deal this year. And I liked his media availability, too. And Connor's a smart guy, and he's been a good talker over the years, good communicator. And he was talking about exactly what we were just talking about. I got to produce more. And he very much understands the path to the playoffs involves improvement from within across the group. Let's hear from Garland, who tells us that last year was an outlier.
Yeah, last year I think carries a lot of noise that isn't as warranted. I think we dealt with injuries right from the start of the season. We lost Brock, JT left us, Roney got hurt for an extended period of time. Huggy played through an injury most of the year. Demmer, we had a lot of top players hurt. Chytil, Petey at the end. I mean, we just couldn't get healthy. And then obviously we had a little bit of a distraction as a group, but we overcome a lot with adversity, but we're 4 points out with all those injuries. I think we're a pretty good hockey club. I think we got a really good coaching staff. I think, we're in a great place to play. We have some really good pieces coming back. And, I think the noise is a lot louder than what we feel in the room. So we're a confident group. We got to have a great summer. Guys got to get better, and guys got to train and come in ready to play. And, we have a good training camp. I think we'll feel really good about ourselves.
There's a little revisionist history there. Mm-hmm. Called it a little distraction. Well, president of hockey operations called it more than that.
Yes.
How about when JT left us? And those two are very close. So I don't think that was an intentional barb, but
yeah,
I heard that and went, okay. Connor also talked about how he and here's the flip side of what we were just talking about. He enjoys playing here, believes in the organization, but take a listen to what he says here about a big market in a playoff run.
We're playing there. I believe in our management staff. I believe in our coaches, and I believe in the group we have. And I think we're going to continue to get better, whether we add players or we have a great group of young guys coming up. So, I was very interested on being on a team in a big market where, we had that playoff run. You got the taste of what that's like in a big city, and it's an addicting feeling. Winning a lot, and I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to win a cup. In a city like that. So that's what my goal is for the next 7 years.
He gets it though. That's the lure. That's the difference. You can go and hide in
And Nikolai Ehlers apparently wants exactly that. He wants complete anonymity when he walks out of the rink. That even Winnipeg was too hot a market for him.
Well,
even though it's like Pleasantville, this is a guy from suburban Massachusetts, suburban Boston, if you will, who got one opportunity, and granted, may have been scarred by his Arizona experience, but has had one opportunity to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs in a Canadian market, in a bigger hockey market, and talked about how it's addicting.
I mean, to finish the thought there on somebody like Ehlers, and doesn't mean one market is better than the other. Hear me out here. But I think in Edmonton, Calgary, and Winnipeg, particularly Winnipeg, though, and maybe Edmonton too, there's not a lot going on. So the ratio of people that could identify a hockey player is higher in those towns than it is probably in Vancouver, I would say.
For sure. No,
you know,
sure.
it is everything.
Like Toronto's big enough, so Leaf players can get lost there.
Yeah, you absolutely can. It's not to say that it's not a Leaf town. It is.
Yeah.
But it's just a big enough town. And we're sort of in the in-between there. But, Garland can feel what that would be like based on what he saw last year in the playoffs. And that's
but here's
the
also
lure.
Here's also the other thing that doesn't get talked a whole lot about, in part because it runs contrary to hockey culture, where you're not supposed to be a tall poppy, a show off, or anything like that. You're not supposed to stand out. There are a lot of hockey players who enjoy being a celebrity, a local celebrity, being known when they walk out, having people make comment, hey, nice to see you, great game last night, all that. Can I buy you a beer?
There are type A's in every cut of swath of the population,
Absolutely.
You're going to find type A's.
And hockey players have to repress that because that goes against the code, if you will. But there are a lot of guys in this league who enjoy being big man on campus, have had semblances of it moving up the ranks in their towns, in their junior cities, and now in the National Hockey League. Sounds to me like Connor Garland loves being a guy here in Vancouver who's known as a hockey player, known as a hardworking Vancouver Canuck and a fan favorite. I don't blame him.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a great existence.
He knows that people love the fact that he's right on the doorstep of the net every night.
Even at that size, taking the licking.
Purposely being on both knees at times, playing with like a floor hockey stick at the side of the... doing whatever it takes.
The other thing we should
get that rubber across the line.
The other thing we should say, and talked about this a little bit. Remember, a few years back when we were looking at trading Garland, or Garland was asking out.
Yeah.
And J-Pat used to mention this all the time as well. He was such an unorthodox player. He would zig when you expected a zag, and he had a unique way of playing that I'm sure he developed over the years because of his stature, and you have to play differently at that stature. You can't play the same way a 6'3", 220-pound power winger can. Whether it's Connor moving back towards playing a little bit more predictably, or Vancouver Canucks teammates getting a better read, getting a better book on Garland and how he plays, the chemistry between Garland and whatever line mates that he's had has been much better over the last couple of seasons compared to what it was earlier in his Canucks career.
The whirling dervish era where he was just bouncing off the walls, and the try was there, but not a lot of cohesiveness.
Right. There was a lot of effort per minute that didn't exactly equal production. That's improved over the last couple of years. Now, though it wasn't in Boeser's case, getting your own players re-signed is usually the easy part, right? Jeff Merrick talks about this often when we have him on the show, that, there's a couple general managers around the league that he talks to that are like, okay, do I want to work? Do I want the challenge of actually having to go out and replace this guy? Or am I just going to be like,
But another Jeffism
it doesn't take a whole lot to get your own guys re-signed if you meet their number.
But another Jeffism on that note, though, is you better be damn sure what you're signing yourself up for if you're making a change, versus definitely what you're leaving behind.
Sometimes that's the best course of action, and in other cases, it's because the GM just doesn't want to have to put themselves out there and find the replacement. That's hard. That's where you can get criticized. Yeah. That could potentially cost you your job.
And I'm all for that criticism when it is clearly what's at play here. I don't see that as what's being at play here with the Canucks.
Well, Alvin knows there's more work to do.
guys in Boeser, Demko, and Garland. How much of the discussion is it's time for this group who has been together, grown together, but really hasn't done a lot of winning together? Like, do you get a sense that, I don't know if frustration is the right word, but a commitment for this group to sort of move it to the next level?
Well, I think they realize that. They are excited. I think my job is to surround them with players that together will grow as a team. And when you have players like that, Demko, Quinn Hughes, PD, Boeser, I mean, those are top players in the league. It's our job to make sure we have the right surroundings here. And I do believe that we added that some pieces, and we still have some work to do. But I'm very proud of what our scouting staff have built up in terms of the pipeline. That there is younger players coming here. If they will be ready or not, I think that's training camp will dictate that.
Yes, he's absolutely right. It's his job, and there is more work to do to surround this core. And let's face it, this is a good core, but it's not the best core in the NHL. Elias bouncing back takes you a huge step up those rankings, but the job as it stands is pretty difficult. You were a mid-pack team this past year. Right now, on paper, you haven't improved a lot. That top two center hole is particularly glaring. And Jim Rutherford was on Toronto radio this morning talking about how that remains a priority, but they may have to start the season like this. You know that's not their preference. You know they would like to get a center, knock Chytil down to the third-line center spot, have Bluger and Ratu battle it out to be your fourth-line center. Maybe
it has to be the plan.
Maybe they both play on the same night. As we talked about, some people see Ratu, other than the face-offs, more as a winger in the NHL because of the skating. So that, to me, at the very least, means we got to be on alert this summer. And then when I hear Dhaliwal say they have soured on Dakota Joshua and are looking to move him or need to move him now to create the cap space to find the center iceman, I do wonder, A, if he was the roster player they offered the Minnesota Wild alongside the 15th overall for Marco Rossi. B, whether he can be a part of a package, and maybe Archer Sheloff figures into this package. Maybe some of the other prospects on the cusp fit into that package as well to get you your second-line centerman. Or maybe, Blake, you just have to move Dakota Joshua and his salary out to create the cap space to go find that top two center in a secondary transaction.
Like, we've seen players like Dakota Joshua traded all over the NHL here. Like, these are the so-and-so traded for a 7th-round pick, so-and-so traded for a 6th-round pick. I mean, you know, Evander Kane makes a lot more than Dakota Joshua does and is way older.
Yep.
And
Dakota has a
12-team
no-trade list with a cap hit of $3.25 million for this coming season and 2 more. He was due or is due a $1.5 million signing bonus here. So actually, he'll have $3.5 million of the total value of the contract paid out in signing bonuses. In fact, he'll have nearly $8 million of this contract off the books at the end of this season. As of right now, you're looking at about $6.25. So he is also one of those players who, that's the cap hit, 3.25, but is going to make principally a lot less money, particularly after this season, but even over the course of the next 3 seasons, considering the deal. That could be attractive.
Yeah, for a low-generating team, that would seem like a good bet because you're not paying him much. His cap hit is still reasonable if he's an 18-goal scorer again.
Yeah.
You'd have to make a bet on that.
Dhaliwal also said their number one priority yesterday was Christian Dvorak and not Brock Boeser.
That's frightening. I mean, the cap number, again, the cap number that he got is ridiculous, but the fact that it's
what did he get?
5.4 is it? 5.2?
Yeah.
But It's only a 1-year term
for a mostly fourth line center.
30-point guy. Like he like Pius Suter looks like Mario Lemieux next to Christian Dvorak. So I don't understand that one at all. It's just a strange contract. Okay, great. You got your bag for a year.
The other thing I don't understand about that is he was infinitely attainable if you gave him turn.
Yes, you would think.
Like he got 1 year.
Like wouldn't you have, if you're Dvorak, if you're the Canucks and you really did like him, wouldn't you say, okay, you got your 5.4 for 1 year, we'll give you $4 million for 2 years.
Right.
Don't you sign up for that if you're Dvorak? And again, I'm not advocating for Dvorak.
One would think.
Yeah, I mean, strange.
I heard that. I'm like, wow, that's like Dvorak wasn't helping your goal
We've said
output.
fled the position. I meant fled the position with legit 45-point guys. That is not Dvorak.
No. Although
that's a cut below.
You know, like I can understand them liking the profile of the player better than Teddy Bluger. I could see them, you know, hoping to have gotten him and then doing other things with the deck chairs. But
yeah,
instead of Boeser, instead of a legit top six forward, very, very odd. Canucks have agreed to terms today with defenseman Pierre-Olivier Joseph on a 1-year deal worth $775,000. That's the NHL minimum. He was a first-round pick of the Arizona Coyotes way back when. Remember them? He was involved in the Taylor Hall trade, if I'm not mistaken. Ultimately got himself to Pittsburgh, where, of course, Rutherford and Alvin were. He then went to St. Louis and then went back to Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
194 career NHL games, including 47 last year. Has played the right side despite being a left shot guy. Has played a little bit with Marcus Pettersson, who he was in Pittsburgh with. It's interesting because you're adding to a position where you're already strong, where you may already have a logjam for minutes when everybody is healthy. And clearly there's an interest and familiarity here with Joseph, given his time in Pittsburgh. I'm just wondering if the dust is settled on July 1st. They're still without their center, Blake, and they have come to the realization, okay, we are going to have to move an NHL roster defenseman to get that center, so let's backfill with the third pair guy we're comfortable with, and maybe that unlocks being able to move a top four guy or even DPD.
Okay, like who? Who, like
DPD.
What, you think DPD? God.
Well, I think teams are asking for Elias Pettersson if they're going to give the Canucks a top two center. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a more than reasonable ask.
Yeah.
I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
In fact, I would probably want more if it's a legit top two center, given who's looking for top two centers. Given how valuable those pieces are.
Oh, no.
We all love DPD, but understand he's not going to be as beloved elsewhere, and certainly not with a savvy general manager who's trying to swing.
His resume is not long enough.
Exactly.
It'd be Pettersson and a pick.
Yeah. Would hate to see him go because love the kid and love his style of play, and he gives the Vancouver Canucks something that they don't have with their other defensemen, or at least not in the same measure. But to get a top two center in a trade, even at the best of times, is a very expensive add. When you've got the number of teams that are out there hoping to do the same as we see right now, and many of them with cap space to make that move without having to move money out or without having to move a lot of money out, it becomes an expensive piece. I think that's something they absolutely have to consider, even if it's unpalatable to them because of the great success story that is Elias Pettersson and his development in such a short amount of time here up the Canucks depth chart and into the lineup as a regular they didn't even paper down to Abbey.
And a lot of people think, I've seen a lot of it. He's a Christian Wolanin. He's a Noah Juleson replacement. No, this is like a full-time National Hockey League player who requires waivers. If you're wondering about that, that's Jimmy Schultz, who they signed late yesterday. They signed 3 AHL players. Mackenzie McEachern, Joseph LeBate, who's a former Vancouver Canuck, and Jimmy Schultz. Schultz is the Wolanin / Juleson replacement. this is a National Hockey League player that they don't bother signing him now only to lose him on waivers in the first week of the season. He's going to be on the roster on day one. Let's say they don't make the trade that you're talking about, the possible trade. It means that there's a really good chance that certainly one of, if not both, of Mancini and EPD are with Abbotsford at least for the first couple of days.
I don't think if you're talking about just
opening night.
Yeah,
opening night he's to clear the cap.
Because he doesn't require waivers.
That's right.
That I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but on opening night, I would put large sums on P.O. Joseph being on the Canucks opening night roster, not opening night lineup per se.
Yeah. DPD can still go down to the farm without requiring waivers.
Yeah.
In fact, he may be the only Vancouver Canuck. Yes, Mancini as well. Mm-hmm. Mancini doesn't require, Kudryavtsev, but I think this further pushes him down the depth chart. Assassin, Lekramaki.
And we don't suspect that the Latvian signee, Vervinskis, is going to make the opening night lineup. He's theoretically as well.
Yeah, so I just, when I saw that sign, the first thing that jumped to my mind is, are they creating more depth on the blue line because they've now recognized they're going to have to move a higher up the lineup defenseman to get that center?
It's possible. It's possible.
You mentioned LeBate is back. He played 13 games for the Canucks in 2016-2017, a season we all would like to forget. Since then, he's been with the Senators, Predators, Hurricanes, and Blue Jackets, as well as the KHL.
If we're talking replacements, he's PDG because they said goodbye to PDG.
PDG is going to Winnipeg. Cole McWard is going to the New York Islanders as we sit here at 12:40 Pacific time on July 2nd. Nikolai Ehlers, no sign. Pius Suter, no sign. Jack Roslovic, no team either.
Still waiting. A few more middling, like Mason Appleton just signed.
Oh, who did he sign with?
I didn't even see.
God, I was a little surprised by that. Every time it's seemingly, of course, maybe this has to do with the Winnipeg Jets having such great success against the Canucks.
He's Detroit for 2.9 over 2 years.
But every time I've watched Jets games, and especially Jets-Canucks game, I'm like, boy, that Appleton kid can play. But
his production is a lot lower than you would have liked, given he was showing this prowess early in his career, but it just hasn't developed. Like he had a 25-point season in 56 games in the weird North Division year. And you thought, okay, nice start.
Yeah.
He's really not progressed since then.
Let's get to our menu today. It is brought to you by our friends at Greta. It's a fantastic spot to watch all the games, home and away, to pregame or to postgame, because you are very close to the stadium and to the arena. But it's an even better spot for your upcoming party. If you are planning a team building event, a summer sociable, maybe you got a whole bunch of family in town for a wedding, you're looking for a place night before, night after the wedding, check out Greta. It's got the arcade that surrounds the bar. It will be fun for everyone. The food is affordable and delicious. To book your next event, GretaBar.com. Greta 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. Big show today. Irfaan Gaffar is going to join us from RinkWide. Irf dug up a fair bit of information about the Canucks and their machinations yesterday on trade deadline or on free agent day, as well as leading into it. So great conversation with Frank Corrado's analysis of everything the Vancouver Canucks did, and he's a fan. And then Vancouver Canadians pitcher Cal Stephen, one of the top Blue Jays prospects. He's been up here now for a handful of starts. He's looked fantastic. One of the many good development stories that's happening for Blue Jays prospects with the Vancouver Canadians, and the C's are at home tonight and tomorrow as well. That's all coming up as well. Good news for the BC Lions, or at least it's looking that way in terms of the health of Nathan Rourke. News isn't as good injury-wise with the Vancouver Whitecaps, and some Canadians making big international moves in global sport. That's all coming up. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. I took another future yesterday. Were you on anything last night?
Don't remember. No, I think it was. I was
on Diallo.
No, I was on
today.
Diallo.
Yeah, and Diallo is on court
battling as we speak. Yes, I'll stay with Wimbledon. I'll go to Mboko tomorrow, who's the favorite.
Wow, from lucky loser. And incidentally, we should clarify that. So she lost her last match of qualifying, but someone in the draw dropped out, and Mboko got into the Wimbledon draw that way. What a story it would be, huh?
And
like a John Daly story.
And after the action today already, Sabalenka is the only top 5 seed on the women's side. So it's
really,
this
is getting interesting.
It is
now.
very much interesting. So to get some value, because because Mboko is the favorite, I have to actually nail the sets to get some value here. But I'll say that it's a 3-setter that she's going to be tested here by Haley Baptiste, and I'll go Mboko 2-1 for plus 275.
With the way these draws are going and the number of seeds that are going down, is it possible we get a real life Wimbledon story? Is Chris Bettany going to win this tournament?
I didn't know that did he get through wild card? Yeah,
a little older now.
Paul Bettany.
Oh, right, Paul Bettany. My bad. Mm-hmm. I screwed that up. I knew his last name was Bettany. How come I didn't get Paul? Have you seen that film?
I have not seen that film, no.
With Kirsten Dunst, rom-com around
I
Wimbledon?
prefer him as Vision on the Marvel movies.
I prefer him as Silas, the Opus Dei monk in Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
He was excellent. Okay. It's been a while, but I'm getting excited, everybody, because the biggest Blue Jays series in 2 years, and they already got a couple of wins over the Yankees. A chance tonight to win the series, to tie the Bronx Bombers for first place. You've got the pitching advantage with Jose Barrios against Will Warren. And I'm getting plus value at plus 110. Okay, Blue Jays, let's play ball. Gimme Canada's team on the money line.
When's the last time the Jays were 10 games above 500?
Were they a couple of years ago? That was last time they made the postseason. I don't know if any point they were.
Yeah.
But I like this team better than I like that team.
Yeah.
Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, use code NATION when doing so. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Irfaan Gaffar coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
And with the summer season upon us, you want to have a go-to drink, right? You want to know when the temperature goes up, you've got something in your back pocket that you can rely on that just says summer. Nothing says summer more than Simply Spiked. With variety packs to suit your every palate, containing real fruit juice, the lemonade, the limeade, the Simply Spiked Peach, a sweet and juicy summer sip. Go check it out at your local liquor store for your next summer hangout and find out what a crowd pleaser Simply Spiked will be, whether you're in a big group or a small one. Must be legal drinking age. Celebrate responsibly.
It was so hot here yesterday, and sort of mid to late afternoon is when the sun hits our apartment just so, and it warms up. We went down to Kit's Pool for a dip, basically just to cool off a little. And then we came back for a pre-dinner cocktail. She had Simply Spiked on the deck. It was absolutely lovely.
What I like is you buy the lemonade pack and you think, oh, I just get lemonade. No, you don't. You get lemonade, you get strawberry lemonade, and you get blueberry lemonade.
Brilliant.
You buy the limeade pack, you think, oh, I just get limeade? No. You get signature limeade, you get your cherry limeade, you get your blackberry limeade. You see, there's variety within the variety.
Thank
Enjoy
you to
it.
Simply Spiked for the drop last
Yes.
week. It is coming in very, very handy here in the summer. Here's our buddy Irfaan Gaffar of RinkWide, who, like all of us, was watching the Vancouver Canucks in free agency yesterday and listening in on Brock Boeser this morning. How we doing, buddy?
I'm great. How are you guys? You really sold that Simply Spiked. I think I need to
Thank
put
you.
something else back.
Blake is a master.
You're
Yeah.
thirsty, right?
Yeah,
You're thirsty
it's-
immediately.
Really am.
Here we are.
It's early, but I'm thirsty.
It is a little too early, but it's hey, it's drinking time somewhere. So, look, you've known Brock his entire tenure here. He was all but gone, Irf. How surprised were you yesterday when you saw the news that Boeser would be back?
Very surprised, as they were. I think the phrase "not shocked but surprised" is kind of the way that they're talking about how the situation unfolded. I think for Brock, as much as he said that, he had to wrap his head around not being a Vancouver Canuck and things like that, and moving and starting new and finding new teammates and friends and whatever new city, there was always one foot in. And now maybe that foot turned into a pinky toe at some point, but eventually, when that call was made from Patrick Alvin, albeit in the final moments of when Brock wanted to make a decision, he tells his agent to get a deal done. They get to that magic number of $50 million. And now Brock, by the end of this contract, if it all plays out how it's supposed to, will spend 17 years as a Vancouver Canuck.
Yeah, how many teams is your understanding? How many teams were involved here? Where were the offers at, Irf? And was the home state Minnesota Wild involved here?
Yeah, I believe there's about 10 offers in and around for Brock Boeser's services. I believe the Wild were in the mix, but not as competitive as some of the other ones. I think the biggest thing where you look at teams that were willing to spend money, the San Jose Sharks were willing to spend a lot of money. The Columbus Blue Jackets willing to spend a lot of money. The Utah Mammoth, obviously we saw some of the deals that they made, were willing to spend a mammoth amount of money on certain players. And I think that there was some money left on the table. But in the end, you get to the $50 million. You're here for another 7 years. That was huge for him. He said in his availability that, he doesn't have to do a bridge deal anymore. Doesn't have to worry. He can kind of focus on playing hockey and then, getting better and help this team win over the next 7 years. And I think that, and ticked off all the boxes, obviously. And, him having his teammates bug him to get it done was one of the reasons as well.
So he turned down more money. He turned down the home state Minnesota Wild, and he probably turned down some teams that were closer to cup contention in that 10-team mix too, huh, Irf?
Yeah, I think that, there was some talk about the LA Kings. I don't know how far that got, but there was definitely a lot of teams that were interested. And I think that, for Brock, and just looking at it from a Vancouver Canucks perspective here in the Lower Mainland, it was all about fit. Right? He's going to play on the top two lines no matter what. If things don't go well for Elias Pettersson and whoever's on his right wing, Brock is probably going to end up playing in that spot. He's going to get a lot of minutes. He's going to be probably one of the members of the leadership group with an assistant, if not both, home and away at some point here. And I think, the wanting to, as he says, buy a house here in Vancouver, build a family, and know where he's going to be was very important to him as well.
The mixed up, cruel world we live in has us sometimes wanting to create narratives that are heartwarming and Disney movie-esque, but there seems to be a legitimate thread here that his buddies here, and a room that we know was toxic at times, what he called very noisy in the middle part of the season. Still, the guys in that room sounded like played a big role in him coming back. And as much as that room has had problems, I think it sounds like Canuck fans should be a little bit heartened by the ones that remain there right now.
And the ones that extended here for long periods of time, right? Connor Garland, 6 years, $36 million. Thatcher Demko, obviously with his extension, and then finally Brock Boeser. I think that the noise aspect of it was definitely a lot. I mean, how many times did we talk about this on your show, obviously on RinkWide Vancouver, and every other show to man here in the Lower Mainland about what was going on with the Vancouver Canucks? It was everything but on the ice. And I think that was probably the biggest thing. So for Brock, having guys like Connor Garland be in his corner and in his ear all the time, Tyler Myers was pretty big on it as well. And then, we saw the tweet about Thatcher Demko basically being like, thanks, sweet baby Jesus, that he's coming back. So that they're tight. But these are guys that have come into the organization, except for Garland. I mean, Brock and Demko growing up together, right? And then you have Elias Pettersson that you can add to that mix, also growing up, as well as, a guy like Quinn Hughes. So for Brock, that's kind of the new core four-ish, if you kind of refer to it as how the Toronto Maple Leafs situation is. And for the Vancouver Canucks, I think for management, it's definitely a sigh of relief that they were able to get it done. I think that, they poked around at some free agents, and in the end, Brock was their guy.
Well, we brought your tweet up here because I do want to ask you about how much this was Quinn Hughes fueled. We know the relationship. We know they're all very close. How much of, less bringing Brock back because he actually did get to market, but Garland and Demko in particular and the extensions that they signed, how much of that do you think is with an eye to keeping Quinn Hughes happy and keeping Quinn Hughes, period, beyond this coming season?
I don't think it's a surprise that we're going to sit here and talk about it until we can't talk about it anymore, and that's whether Quinn Hughes goes or Quinn Hughes signs an extension, of whether or not Quinn Hughes is going to remain a Vancouver Canuck. I would be naive if I didn't think that it had something to do with it. You bring back guys that he's comfortable with, guys that he knows well, guys that go out to dinner on the road all the time together. And yes, it is now, 4 Americans that are coming back and, or 3 plus Quinn, that are there. But I talked to someone in the organization that probably would know something about the situation. And I kind of half jokingly said, what a way to keep Quinn. And the response was, hope it all works out for us. And I think that is definitely the mindset, right? Because they don't know for a fact one way or the other. Quinn Hughes could, say all the right things and do all the right things and want to be here. But in the end, in the back of his mind, okay, I do want to go play with my brothers. But I think what the Canucks are going to do is they're going to try and take the right steps to figure out a way where they can go and offer Quinn the most money and show him that they're committed to believing in whatever he wants them to do as well. And maybe bringing Brock back was one of the things.
Well, the peer pressure's there too. All these players, change the course of their life, to play with him. Yeah. Are you not going to return the favor here and stick it out with us to try to win? I mean, who knows, again, what piece of the pie, what size of that piece of the pie, the decisions are, but it's going to be there. It's going to be in his head a little bit, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I mean, as it should be. Look, as much as Brock had people texting him being like, Demko and Garland and Tyler Myers and whoever it was saying, you got to come back, you don't think Quinn and Jack, or Luke and Jack Hughes are going to be like to their brother, hey, This would be great. Why don't you come play with, we're brothers. Forget about being friends. Well, let's do this. So there's going to be a big decision in a couple of years. And I think that the Canucks are trying to take every step that they can do here to be competitive and to show Quinn that, there is a plan.
The one thing that I'm a little surprised on is that Brock was able to make this decision with clear head, knowing he doesn't know who his centerman will be. As you have sort of alluded to, he hasn't traditionally played with Elias Pettersson. Most of his successes come with JT Miller. And even after the JT Miller trade, looked a little bit, awry over the last third of the season. So he makes a leap of faith that they're going to put somebody capable beside him. Do you think he thinks that it's just going to be Filipino? Do you think he thinks that they're going to pull a rabbit out of the hat here and add another centerman in the remaining, 2 months of this offseason?
I think the rabbit of the hat idea makes a little bit more sense, unless the Vancouver Canucks organization knows something a lot more about Filipino and his health status more than we do. I mean, concussions are a scary thing. You hope there's nothing but the best for a guy like him and his recovery and the way that he's training heading into this season. But we can't sit here and think that if Filipino goes into the boards in the corner and gets hit pretty hard, what's going to happen? And if that happens early in the season, if that happens in preseason, if that happens in training camp, what is going to happen? So the Canucks, I know that Patrick Alvin alluded to Adam Foote saying that he was comfortable with, going with Elias Pettersson and Filipino. I'm not entirely sure management is as comfortable as the head coach. So I think that they're going to try. I really do. And if it happens early in the season, maybe not before training camp, but I do think that, eventually the Canucks are going to acquire a centerman.
Do you think Suter's toast? Like, is that ship sailed?
I mean, the market's not as hot as people thought it was going to be for a guy like Pius Suter, especially when you see what some of the money is going for.
For anybody. The market's not hot really for anybody.
Yeah, and, guys are waiting. Like, Ehlers knew he was going to get his money, so he's like, I can just sit on it for a couple days. Brock obviously wanted to come here. So you look at the teams that are willing to spend money right now, and, there was the talk that Pius Suter was going to go join Rick Tocchet because Rick Tocchet really liked him, and obviously that didn't work out, or hasn't worked out as we're doing this. But, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think he's looking for a long-term deal, 4.5, maybe closer to 5. Like, if you can get 5 on the open market, you go and do that. I'm just not entirely sure that someone's willing to commit that and term for a guy like Pius Suter.
Take me through the Thatcher Demko extension. What did both sides get here? What were the motivations as you understand them?
You weren't getting term, I don't think, from the Vancouver Canucks point of view, and you weren't getting Demko to extend unless the AAV was high, right? So you shorten the term, you give him a higher AAV, and as Patrick Allvin said, believes that if healthy, they're going to be one of the top 2 top goaltending tandems in the league, and I believe that too. I mean, by all accounts, Thatcher Demko is having himself a hell of an early summer already, working out at 100%, getting ready for this season. But we can't sit here and say that they're not going to go into a preseason game and he tweaks something, and then what? Or we can't say what's game 12 of the season that something happens. So until he goes out and proves it, from the fan base and I guess the media perspective, it's okay. What are we going to get out of Thatcher Demko? But from the team, the guy's been there forever. They wanted to extend him. Both sides wanted to get a deal done, and they ended up making it work.
Do you think you'll get an ironclad commitment from the coaching staff that they are not going to overwork Thatcher Demko? Like,
yeah.
We've talked about it. That they say it's been lip service though, and they cannot help after a few good starts in a row from Thatcher Demko. They can't help but give him the 4th, 5th, and 6th in a row as well. They just can't.
Yeah, I mean, look, you almost have to do load management. Like, I think that just with the history of Thatcher Demko's injury, and I think that as much as Thatcher Demko wants to play, I think he knows that the guy that's behind him, or not even behind at this point, it might be right beside him.
Beside him, yeah.
1A, 1B is going to be there for you. Maybe you're not going to be dependent on every single night and feel that pressure if you're Thatcher Demko, like, I got to go. I got to play 10 of 12. Because we're not going to win unless I play. The defense in front of you is a little bit better, and you have a guy like Kevin Lankinen that can step in and also do the job as well. And another thing that's going to motivate Thatcher Demko for trying to be healthy and wanting to be, available is the Olympics. We can't sit here and say that, he doesn't want to go and play and show that he's going to be able to represent his country in February.
And those are extra games for both of them. Like, Lankinen's got a chance to go as well, and so you want to make sure games played are low for these players, so when they come back, they've got something in the tank, right?
No, absolutely. And I think with the U.S., obviously, there's Hellebuck, there's Ottinger. There's going to be some competition there. But for Demko being hurt and not being able to go to the Four Nations, I think that, upset him a little bit. And I think that, obviously, as being a Vezina candidate at some point in his career, he's fully capable of being that guy again. And he really does believe that.
Dreger told us on Monday that he wondered whether there was a deal to be made packaging some of the Calder Cup stars. And he didn't name check anyone, but obviously I think Archer Shilovs would stand to reason there. They have a little depth in their pipeline now, Irf. Could you see a deal packaging some of these young, on the cusp prospects to land that center? Like, I know it's not going to get you Marco Rossi, but, a change of scenery type center. Could you see that sort of deal construction from the Canucks this summer, given the limited cap space they have now?
This one's interesting. Had a hell of a postseason for Abbotsford. I'm obviously very willing of the MVP of the playoffs for the American Hockey League. But if you really look at it, like, what has he done at the NHL level? I mean, it was great in that very sample size in the playoffs, unbelievable. And then Rick Tocchet couldn't play him last season, right? That's why Kevin Lankinen got an extension, because they didn't know the the status of Demko. They didn't know what they were going to do. And I think that if Shilovs is the one guy that is going to be your dangle to try and get a center, I don't think it gets it done. I really don't. I think you look at teams around the National Hockey League, most of them have 1 and 2, right? And if you look at him for 3, then it's like, okay, you might be able just to pick him up on waivers for free. Why would you give something else up?
Right.
If you're really looking at it in that way. Their only carrot to dangle, if they really want a center, is Willander. They're not trading DPD, right? I don't think a smaller forward like Jonathan Lekkerimäki gets you something. So if you look at tradable assets that could get you something in return that is a prospect, it's Willander, and I don't think they're going to trade him. Niels Höglander, if he comes out to a flying start, maybe you can dangle him a little bit. Dakota Joshua, I'm not entirely sure if that's a package as well.
If he had a great start, I think he'd be worth something. But
again, in that top 6-4 group, not Evander Kane, not Jake DeBrusk, Connor Garland just signed an extension, and Brock Besser. Like there's nobody else that's really in that what they have that you can dangle in front of a team and say, here, this is it, this is the player. Now we want X, Y, and Z. It's Willander, and I don't think that they want to make that move.
Gotcha. All right, buddy. Thank you for filling in some of the gaps here. Appreciate this. We'll catch up soon.
All right, gentlemen. Be well.
I'm Matt. He's Blake. This is the Wall Center, and it's historic.
We played golf a few days ago, and it was a bit of a slog getting home. You know what would have made my life a lot easier? The HOV line. Not afforded to me because I haven't yet purchased my BZ4X from Toyota. Fully electric vehicle, the latest addition to the Toyota lineup, which is famed going all the way back to the original Prius, of course. And this car is a lot of fun to drive. And it is a car, but the storage capacity in the back and the hatch is, 3 golf bags, a couple of hockey bags, easy. Built for BC. LE all-wheel drive edition comes with 0.99% financing over 36 months. You can get up to $5,000 in incentives as well. Go take one for a test drive. That's all that they ask. You'll fall in love. ShopToyota.ca.
Here's Frank Corrado, former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst, and he gets our vote for best dressed yesterday on the TSN free agent.
Chef's kiss on the
Frenzy.
light blue.
Oh, the suit was magnificent,
nice.
Frank.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The information was fine, too. The information was fine. Give or take.
I had to try and distract everyone from the lack of content, the lack of juicy content that we had. So I said, let me brighten it up a little bit with the suit. Although Gino had the double-breasted, and then he came up to me about halfway through the show. He goes, I'm doing a wardrobe change today. I said, what? He goes,
was this a Cher concert?
And he brings out the creamsicle pink unit. And I'm like, Gino. He goes, hey, I told you I was doing the wardrobe change. He made it count.
Oh, my God.
Did he ever? You have to have some kind of panache to wear the light blue double-breasted with the white buttons and then change into the creamsicle.
Hey, Bobby Mack's last entry was
Bobby
pretty
Mack
good.
went out in a blaze, too, fashion forward.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to be a part of.
I'm sure.
And to see that up close. First of all, congratulations to Bob. It was, you guys lived it, growing up, watching Bob, listening to Bob, hanging on his every tweet on those big days. And the thing, he just did it with so much class and integrity. And you're just not going to find people that have bad things to say about Bob, really. He was the original. He was the best. And he's going out on his own terms. And it was, congratulations to him. Because that was pretty emotional.
Because he's done it in stages, was he a little less emotional because he'd already been mostly retired?
I don't know. I don't know if he was less emotional than he would have been, but I think he did it the right way, right? The soft retirement, kind of lessen the workload, and then now drive up to the cottage, and maybe we'll never see him again. We'll never hear from him again.
Well, as he said to Duthie, I'm not even going to return your call anymore. And a couple of things I just want to highlight about Bob. First of all, the guy you saw on TV is Bob, but the guy we knew in the flesh and blood, in the flesh and blood, is a lot funnier than the guy.
Hilarious.
The dry one-liners were incredible. over the years. Tell a quick story here. We were up in Penticton at Canucks Young Stars. This was after you, Frank. We're sitting around a big table having dinner. Bob shows up a little bit late. The conversation is about that week's Master Chef, where the contestants were asked to cook really obscure
exotic meats,
exotic proteins. Bobby walks in and, what are you guys talking about? We said the Master Chef episode, and he goes, "Oh, how about them bull testicles, huh?" So the table roars, and then I'm like, "Bob, this is my partner Carmen," and she's like, "I've been watching you on TV my whole life, and the first words out of your mouth in the flesh are bull testicles."
That's amazing.
All right, let's move on. What did you make of the Canucks' work?
I think that's a good day for the Canucks. I, like basically a lot of others, thought that Brock Boeser was out the door. And that's a lot of goal scoring that you had to replace. Like, is he the most perfect player? No, but he's a damn good player. And as far as, pure goal scorers that were available in that UFA class, right near the top of the list, maybe the top guy, once we got to July 1st. So it's really big that the Canucks were willing to go to 7 years, and he wanted to stay. And like that, all in all, that's a pretty good period for them. Like Demko's back, Garland's back, Boeser's back. And think about that. 2 years ago, trying to trade Garland, couldn't do it. He's played so well for the team. He's earned every bit of that extension. In theory, I guess, going by what they said, tried to trade Boeser, couldn't get a return you liked. And I thought that was like, well, that's it. If you're going out there saying that publicly, that you can't get a decent enough return for this guy, so you're just going to keep him, it's like, all right, well, screw you guys. I'll be out of here the first chance I have. And he doesn't do that. He circles back, gets gets to 7 years. I think that's good work for the Canucks. And I would say in the bigger picture, we're always kind of watching the Quinn Hughes thing. Like at some point, that's going to be a dilemma, but you're no worse at this point because you have good players coming back that, maybe don't make you a Stanley Cup contender on paper right now, but at least keep you competitive and in the mix to make the playoffs if everything, goes better than it did last year. So that's a good July 1st for that team.
The Canucks are an example of what we saw around the league where the cap hits were really not anything to quibble about. Terms were a little bit longer maybe in some cases, and I think you could argue that with both Garland and Boeser. But the cap hits really are pretty palatable in an escalating cap era. Like in a flat cap era, it's acceptable, that contract. In an escalating cap era, it's entirely digestible, isn't it?
I think what a lot of people were bracing for was cap is going up $7.5 million and teams are just going to spend. But they looked at who was available and they said, well, why? Why am I going to do this to myself? I'm just going to cap myself out on guys that are, bottom six players that don't really move the needle. Make the signings you need to make. But I think teams also looked at it and said, for the first time, we will have flexibility. And with all these teams that feel like they are quote unquote buyers, or teams that want to be competitive, and not many teams really, kind of waving the white flag saying we're sellers. I think the flexibility is going to do teams a lot of good once we get into the season and teams start to realize, wait a second, we're actually not good, and we're going to have to be sellers to a certain degree here in order to recoup some assets. And I think a lot of teams probably look at that and say, let's position ourselves well so that if something comes up by November or December, we can strike on it. And I think what happened this year as well is because the cap went up, you just didn't have the cap casualties that all these good teams, including the Florida Panthers, were supposed to have. It happens all the time. Happened with Chicago, happened with Colorado. That flexibility kind of gave teams the ability to keep guys in-house. So you didn't have that overflow of guys that, hey, we would love to keep them, but we can't. And so, that really made the primary market what would have normally been a secondary market. And I don't think teams were willing to overspend for the most part on those types of players. And I think that's mostly smart by those guys.
What did you make of the Connor Garland extension 6x6, which kicks in next year at age 30?
yeah, you can quibble about a year or two here and there, $1 million here and there. But if we're kind of learning anything here, it's that with the 32 teams and the more money available, and if you look at who was out there for you to sign, you're better off just paying the extra million or giving the extra year to your guy, because you kind of know what you're getting. And it's like the fear of the unknown. I kind of think, like, if we're looking at how this is going to play out in the long term, it could just be the haves or the have-nots. Like, if you have them already, you'll try and keep them. If you don't have them, you're going to have to make some shrewd trades, or you're going to have to be bad and draft really well for a long time, and then maybe you get a big signing along the way, or maybe you make a blockbuster trade. But, like, I think that process of, like, rebuilding is going to be a lot more difficult now, with more money available. And so where does that leave the Connor Garland thing? It's like most teams, where if you have something that works and is good for you, retain it, because who were you going to replace him with out there at that money, and know exactly what you're getting? It's not exactly that simple anymore.
They re-up their wingers, and leaving that massive second line center hole. Now the Canucks can do a few different things here. They could just see what this particular group starts like, and hope that Chytil can perform up to snuff. Or they could try to make a move either now or later in trading out some contracts, and they would have to nibble around the edges, try to trade away contracts, maybe like Bluger and Sherwood, maybe slightly bigger like Joshua and Höglander. You do that, though, you're then forced to entrust your AHL, albeit Calder Cup winning Abbotsford Canuck guys, for the entirety of a fourth line and maybe partially of a third line. Do you do that to bolster your second line center role, or do you just stand pat and just see how this group starts?
I think right now, like, you're one of many teams that wants that quote unquote second line center. So I think that the thing that Canucks have going for them is, which is not very different than a team like Montreal. Like, they're pretty loaded up with picks and prospects if they wanted to go down that route to trade for a second line center. I think Vancouver, would be well suited as far as who they have in the system that other teams would like. But I guess at this point, you're kind of in this, like, wait and see. Like, you're just in this holding pattern as far as who's going to be available for us. If Boston is bad to start the season, can people start picking off players from there? If Pittsburgh's bad, do you start making some calls on who they have? Like, so I would imagine, barring something opening up here and business kind of being open for certain players that it isn't today, you're probably going into the season with who you have. And I think, if Elias Pettersson, forget about playing like an $11.6 million player. If he can play like an $8 million player and Philip Chytil can be healthy, it's not dire. Like, it's not like
horrific.
It's not. No, it's not. It's actually not bad. Like, if Pettersson just plays like a first line center and Chytil plays like a 3A or a 2B, which I truly believe he is capable of if he's healthy. That's the biggest question mark for me. Is he healthy enough to do it, or can he stay healthy enough? Then I think you're okay. You're going to have to wait and see who becomes available.
Well, okay, so let me play devil's advocate and be the bad guy here.
You love that.
It's my brand. It's not dire. It's not terrible.
If those guys perform, but it's an if.
It is still, if the two ifs hit, we're still looking at what? Bottom third? Top two center group in the league?
Bottom of the middle third.
So somewhere between 15 and 20, you think?
Yeah, that would be my guess.
But I would say go in the Pacific more, like,
okay,
bring it lower. Okay, so you're not as good as Edmonton, for sure. Are you as good as Los Angeles if both those guys play as good as they can? I don't think you're that far off. Like, Kopitar's 37. Quentin Byfield's a good player, but I don't think that's a significant, like, that's not staggering for me. Like, your Calgary is going to throw some combo.
Danault is number 3 there, so like 1 through 3, they're okay. Calgary
is going to throw Kadri Backlund at you two good centermen, but I think the ceiling
pretty
on,
old. But pretty old.
The ceiling on Pedersen is higher for me.
Yeah.
Who else do we have? Like
Carlson and McTavish, the young kids in Anaheim.
So you got young guys there.
The kids in Seattle, Beniers and Wright, if Wright usurps Stevenson.
Seattle's an interesting one because they've basically loaded, like they have a high volume of centermen, but for me, they're not marquee guys yet. Like I would say for sure you're behind Vegas. Like that goes without saying. But I guess I don't see it now we have to preface this. If Pedersen plays like, forget about 11.6, if he plays like 8.
Yeah,
and
80 points. 80 points.
Sure. Yeah, 70, 80 points I think is fair for him. Point per game. And if Chytil's healthy. Yeah, it's not the worst, it's not the best. But I think you're pretty good with your winger position. You're pretty solidified in net. You have like $13 million tied up in 3 goalies. You better be solidified in net. And it's a good blue line. So, maybe some of that makes up for what you lack down the middle of the ice.
Okay, on the goalie situation, do you understand the Demko extension and paying goaltenders $13 million after this season?
On the surface, no one's really looking to do that for goaltenders. And I guess, Demko is healthy and not rehabbing right now, and all that sounds great. I still think there's an element of we're going to have to see it to believe it. Once you have your answer there, then you can decide who's the odd man out. Is it Lankinen, who really felt like an insurance policy when things looked more dire for Demko? Or is it Shilovs, who played amazing in the AHL, but still has to turn himself into a legit NHL goalie, which is the next step. So it just feels like there's some balls up in the air as far as what you're going to do and when you're going to do it with your goaltending position. But I would say it's okay to have more options than less options, right? Like, see how it plays out. They wouldn't be the first team in the last little while to roll with 3 goaltenders for a little bit, and see what the best option is. Like Montreal did it, and they actually did it pretty well, I guess, by Sam Montembeault, because he's kind of established himself as a legit number 1 guy now. And having Jake Allen as that insulator with him and Caden Primo was okay. Now, Caden Primo probably would have something to say about that because he was the one who didn't really benefit from it. But different situation. I guess my point is, not the first team to have to roll with 3 goalies before they figure something out.
And it's not 13, but the Stanley Cup champions have $11.5 million in goaltending. It's mostly to one guy, but in terms of actual cap chunk, it's a good chunk.
Well, they get all those hometown and state income tax discounts.
Right.
Well, the Bobrovsky that was not a state tax discount.
No,
that was
we
overpaid.
have to
It's just all the contracts since him have been the state income tax.
We're just talking in goal. We're just talking.
You know what that
Stay
is?
focused.
You know what that tax is? I'll tell you what that tax is as a former player. That is, my wife is so happy that every day she gets to take the kid for a nice walk on the beach and then go swimming in the pool, that I should probably take $1.5 million pay cut because life is pretty good and I don't want to mess with happy.
I think the Sun is the biggest winner on the Sun Belt teams. They're in the beach teams. Like, I selfishly speaking, if I was a Canadian hockey player and I knew we could play 6 months of the year and have that lifestyle that you're talking about, Anaheim, LA, and Florida would look pretty damn good to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And think about that. They want you. Those teams want you, and they're like, we'll still give you Aaron Ekblad, 6 times 8. It's pretty good living, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just too bad our beach is a little too damp.
It's a little damp in
We
in
got
January.
The damp beach, need the dry
Yeah.
beach. Here's and I just did a tour through the Western Conference top 2 centers. Here's the other learning, and Frank, I'm sorry to report this with you, but it used to be, mama, grow up your baby to be a right shot defenseman. Now it's have them take a lot of face-offs.
Yeah.
Center ice.
Yeah. Well,
wow.
So Christian Dvorak got $5.4 million in Philadelphia.
We noticed that.
Only 1 year, but still, yeah.
1 year. And I think part of that is Philly has to spend money. Like San Jose is still not at the floor. Like they're like $10 million below the floor, basically. So teams did have to spend money, but like watching him in Montreal this year, every big face-off that was on the left side of the ice, there was Christian Dvorak. Overtime started, there was Christian Dvorak, right? Like he would go for the change as soon as he won it. But, when you're 57% in the dot, there will be teams that have use for you. I think Glenn Denning is another one of those guys in Tampa. He was like 58% last year. So I know, man. Yep, take the face-offs, be a right-handed defenseman, and don't skip power skating.
No.
Yeah.
No. Amazing stuff. Thank you, Frank. Until next week.
All right, boys. Have a good one. Enjoy
We'll
the
have
beach.
the center next week, I promise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enjoy the damp beach.
So, Carson Price from the historic Wall Center. We mentioned the Vancouver Canadians with a mini by Northwest League standards series against the Everett Aquasox. Wednesday, Thursday games here in Vancouver at the Nat this week. And then they're on the road. And then there's an All-Star break. And they're back at it on the 18th of July. That's a Friday nooner against Spokane. One of their pitchers and one of the top Jays prospects that we've been talking about who is on the Canadians this year joins us right now from Nat Billy. This is Cal Steven. How you doing?
Good, guys. How's it going?
Oh, fantastic.
Very well.
Fantastic. Tell us, how you enjoying our town here?
Yeah, it's been great. The views are really beautiful, the mountains and seeing the water and that kind of stuff. So it's been really nice.
What'd you do on a off day Monday here between series?
Yeah, so yesterday there was a group of us. We went golfing, and then afterwards, my girlfriend and I, we went down the beach. So hung out, enjoyed the sun, enjoyed the views, and it was good.
Girlfriend
Wow.
here for the duration of your stay in Vancouver, or just a visit from her?
Yeah, so she's able to stay with us, so it's been really nice.
Nice.
Fantastic.
A little bit different than Indiana, a little bit different than Mississippi State for your school year as well. I'm sure
Right.
it's baseball's already taking you around the continent, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the beauties of it, like getting to travel. So it's a lot of fun, but you gotta stay locked in on what's important too.
Well, you've been locked in this year, 7-1 with a 1.90 ERA through 14 starts, some of them in Dunedin, and of course some of them here with the C's. What's been the secret to your success this year, Cal?
Yeah, I think like for me, the biggest thing is just being in advantage counts, like early and often, like when the bat starts, like start with strike one, and if not, just get there really quick. So just putting yourself in situations to get easy outs or early outs. That's been like one of my bigger goals this season, and really just striving for that.
Number 9, Blue Jays prospect. You've already been promoted once this season. Your ex-teammate and friend, Trey Savage, has already moved up to Double-A. How much do you follow all of those prospect rankings and who's due for a promotion and all that stuff that comes with being a minor leaguer?
The rankings, not so much. It's more about just like, for me, it's like keeping up with my buddies, like just seeing how they're doing. I like some friends in Dunedin, some friends in the FCL, and then obviously with Trey moving up, and he starts today. So just kind of keeping up with everyone and that kind of thing.
Does it feel like a rat race? Do you feel pressure, or is it more having that dangling carrot? Do you enjoy the chase at the very least?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like it's your job is to compete, and you want to get up there as fast as you can, but you can't get lost in the process. So I think for me, it's just about like doing what I can do, and when it's time, it'll happen. So just not looking too far ahead and just staying focused.
Has something clicked for you this year for you to jump into the pros like this and to have the record, and your strikes to innings pitch ratio is very nice? Has something clicked, or is this sort of the trajectory that you have felt for a year or two now?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to ask me about myself, I would tell you I'm like a very consistent strike thrower, and like maybe consistency is just like that. That's kind of what I am. So as far as that, it's been really nice. To this year, I've added kind of like a pitch and a half, almost 2 pitches. So just being able to keep the hitters a little more honest, like not being able to ambush a heater or something like that. Like they got to be ready for a little bit more. It just put me in a good situation to where like there's something else going through the hitter's mind while they're in the bat or while they're hitting.
Yeah.
So
what pitches did you add, Cal? What pitches are new?
So this year I'm throwing kind of like a cuttery kind of pitch. It's like a real hard slider. So that's been new to me. And then like my splitter this year is brand new. So just being able to have a pitch that kind of falls down or even a little down to the arm side, just giving a different look into the batter and being able to just be consistent in that pitch. And it's not, I might throw it every 3 weeks kind of thing. Like it's a pitch that I'm using and it's being very efficient for me.
We've got friends in the game who have kids playing, and you know, we see some of their social media posts and they're in the cage pitching and, you know, with the speed gun. And do you remember a moment where you hit a milestone mile per hour and you were like, holy cow, it's on? Like I found heat and I like, this is legit. Do you remember any moments like that?
Yeah, I guess so. So my sophomore year of high school was the first time I hit 90. And I was kind of like teeter-tottering between, like, am I going to hit? Am I going to pitch? Like, what's baseball going to look like for me?
Yeah.
And that kind of set the tone for me a little early to choose this path. Yeah.
Yeah. You're 14 as a sophomore in high school, something like that.
Hitting
Yeah.
90.
You can hit 90 miles an hour at 14. That's probably a pretty good cue.
It's a good path.
Cal. Lastly, you played for a powerhouse NCAA program. Mississippi State has had some fantastic teams and players over the years. Tell me, how does playing in that environment compare with playing at Nat Bailey, one of the best environments in minor league baseball?
Yeah. So, like, what I will say about playing here is it's beautiful, it's amazing, and it's a little bit of a step up from playing in Dunedin as far as the fan base. So just being at a stadium where whether you're on the mound or you're in the dugout, like there's a buzz in the crowd, like there's always people talking, there's always just volume. It's really nice to play for, and like you mentioned, playing in the SEC, playing at Mississippi State, like it's something that if it's new to you, it can maybe rock you around a little bit. Like you got to get used to it. But I think for me, it's nothing but like a boost. Like it just picks you up a little more and maybe gives you just a little more fire.
Yeah, and it's an intimate little ballpark, too. The fans are right on top of you. You hear their conversations, and they sometimes hear the conversations on the field. So, Cal, it was a pleasure watching you pitch Sunday. Terrific outing. Look forward to the next one at the Nat and beyond. Thanks for doing this, my friend. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you.
Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. If you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make a staycation avid. Book your stay here at the Wall. Enjoy an exclusive Sick Harrison Price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for our rates on blackout date supply based on availability. As we get in, the golf report brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Designed Whistler Golf Club. Corey Connors, Nick Taylor, very safe, both inside the top 20 of the FedEx Cup standings to qualify for the PGA Tour playoffs. But there is worry for Abbotsford's Adam Hadwin. There is worry for Surrey's Adam Svensson. Hadwin, 120th. Svensson, 168th. Only the top 70 making the St. Jude Championship, the first leg of the PGA postseason, August 7th to 10th.
And where's Matt Hughes at?
51.
So he's not home and clear, but he's looking good.
He would, as it stands right now, be the first cut in the playoffs, top 50 in the second tournament. Now it's golf. All this can change over the course of 4 days. The problem is we're running out of tournaments.
Yeah.
You got the John Deere this week, the Scottish Open next week. There is an off-field PGA Tour event. The Open Championship, but neither Hadwin or Svensson are qualified, so they're likely to play the Barracuda Championship stateside, then just 2 tournaments after the Open. So fingers crossed for our BC boys here this week and over the next month. They really need some results.
Well, you know, all the Canadians have, you know, have done well in the off-field events throughout the courses of the career. It's often where they got their first, the Sanderson Farms tournaments of the world, if you will. So, you know, both adjacent to the Scottish and the Barracuda, like don't worry about pride. Just go out there and perform.
No, exactly.
and get your results, right?
Yeah, and the Open Championship qualifying being what it is, and you're taking more players from around the world to the Open Championship.
Yeah.
It does tend to spit out some pretty decent PGA Tour names that don't make it there.
Yeah.
So that is not entirely uncommon.
The ISCO Championship, by the way, is the adjacent tournament next week after the John Deere. Never heard of it. New sponsor, I think.
Sign them up, Blake. Now taking bookings for any time during the 2025 season at the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club. Prime time's filling up fast. Check out the patio there, the Palmer's Gallery Bar and Grill overlooking the 18th tee. It is a wonderful, tranquil, and oftentimes shaded spot to escape some of the summer heat, plus take in the golf. You may even see some bears. And if you have a group of 12 or more, tell us about your group, whistlergolf.com/groups.
We should do overtime for the golf report. Gary Woodland, the new vice captain for the U.S. team, they're like, there's 5 vice captains. Now Keegan Bradley knows that he's playing. It's happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, if he qualifies, it's done deal.
Or the vice captains just say, we're nominating you, for God's sakes. You're going.
Oh, BC Lions, where there was excellent news from practice yesterday. Farhan Lalji, Nathan Rourke took the majority of reps and wasn't restricted on throwing the deep passes. That is quite important. Chase Bryce also got first-team reps, while Masoli watched with a shoulder injury. So there's a clue. If Rourke can't go in Montreal, I think we're looking at Chase Bryce. Mathieu Betts, good news there, too. It's an elbow injury, but he did take reps. Stanley Berryhill, the receiver. North Vancouver's Jackson Finley, the rookie. Full participants. Josh Woods, the linebacker, practiced. Jonah Tavai still on the outside looking in. Christophe Beaulieu, the second-year safety for the Lions. The CFL honor roll in June graded out as the top defensive back in the league. Rourke joined him on that honor roll. That's by Pro Football Focus. And how about this? One of the first stamps from new Commissioner Stuart Johnston, CFL negotiation lists are now live, completely open to the public, will be updated daily on CFL.ca. This is the list of 30 names of, it's almost exclusively American players, who CFL teams basically claim and have the first right to negotiate with to bring them up and sign contracts. There's oftentimes some interesting and big names on these lists, right? Sometimes it's a matter of age. Sometimes it's a matter of behavior. The Toronto Argos have Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sanders' son, on their negotiation lists. Looked at the Lions list, couple of interesting NCAA quarterbacks. John Materi was at Washington State. He's gone to Oklahoma. He could be one of the best quarterbacks in NCAA football this year. And Damon Williams of UW, right down the road, also on the BC list. Seas lose 2-1 Everett before a sellout crowd on Canada Day at the Nat.
I would hope.
On a day like yesterday?
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations to outfielder Javon Ward. Promoted yesterday to Double-A. He's been leading the Northwest League on on-base percentage, playing a fine center field. Utility man Jay Harry down from New Hampshire to help out the Seas. We'd seen him before. And I mentioned this last time Everett was in town. Mariners fans, the Seattle system may very well be, you wouldn't have to go too far to find prospect analysts who say the Mariners system right now is the best in baseball. They have 9 prospects in the overall top 100 by MLB Pipeline, including their number 1 prospect, infielder Colt Emerson, who's with the Aqua Sox right now. So you've got Arjun Nimala, Colt Emerson, the top prospects for both the Blue Jays and the Mariners in action at the Nat here tonight and tomorrow.
Good on the organization, the Blue Jays organization here. Their other Canadian-based franchise, the Vancouver Canadians, get a win on Canada Day. Mm-hmm. The Toronto Blue Jays were in full red, demolished the Yankees.
That George Springer grand slam before the huge crowd as they came back and
7 RBI for Springer. That was a good coast-to-coast day for the Blue Jays organization.
It sure was, and 2 more here against the Yankees. We talked about it yesterday. This is the biggest series for the Jays in 2 years. Trying to chase down New York for top spot in the American League East. Get your C's tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. Whitecaps, where Jesper Sorensen saying Ryan Gauld making progress but still not close. And then this, Andres Kubis out 2 to 4 weeks. So scratched Friday in Los Angeles against the Galaxy. They'll get Jaden Nelson back from Canadian duty, but still without Brian White, Seb Berhalter, who played tonight.
I am convinced they look at the schedule. They look at the fact that, hey, they've got Galaxy ahead. Very winnable match, given the personnel they still have. I am convinced that the Whitecaps are so intent on making sure that when these injured players come back, that they are 1,000% ready. That I think they're trying to get to the League's Cup break with the group that they've got, with the bodies that they have, and just make sure that they then drop in, again, a 1,000% healthy Kubas, a 1,000% healthy Ryan Gauld. I heard from somebody that I spoke to who had a chat with Ryan Gauld. Ryan Gauld said he felt great. But the staff is saying, no, we still got to work on this and this. So, it's not like he's limping around the facility here. But, again, they want to make sure that it is buttoned down, that when he goes out there, he can play 80 minutes, 90 minutes, almost from the get-go, and make sure that the Caps are ready for the playoffs.
Sticking with soccer, Jonathan David, Canadian international striker, is off to Juventus in Serie A. The reporting here from Global Soccer Insider Fabrizio Romano says it's a long-term deal they're agreed to. He's going there for medical tests and all the formal steps. If you don't follow Fabrizio Romano, you're the one. The
world population is just above his.
Like our friend Darren Dreger, one of hockey's top insiders, if not the top insider, he's got 1.1 million followers on X. It's a lot for hockey. Mm-hmm. Adam Schefter, the NFL #1 insider.
Yeah, for sure.
He's got 11.5 million followers on X. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Fabrizio Romano sees those counts and he scoffs at the quaintness. 25 million people follow this guy around the world for the soccer transfer news they all crave. 25 million.
Yeah.
It's like the population of Mexico City.
But just think, like, each of the Big Five leagues, and he doesn't just do the Big Five leagues, but each of the Big Five leagues has an industry around them that is equal to the NFL almost, like close.
Yep.
A couple of them do.
Oh, for sure.
And the rest of them are
EPL
close.
For sure does.
Yeah.
That's top league in the world, and soccer draws from it.
La Liga's pretty darn close, I would think, too. But the point is, he's got to have all those contacts. So he's got to be like 10 times the Adam Schefter. That's why think about how many phone calls Adam Schefter makes. So,
I just hope he doesn't have a wife and children, because I'm not sure they would get a second of his attention.
No, why would you? How would you?
How can you?
Yeah.
Caps home Wednesday to face Valor FC in the Canadian Championship at BC Place. It is 2-2 on the aggregate after the first leg in Winnipeg. And women's soccer, Canada-USA, pretty spicy rivalry, goes today in a friendly. Can it ever be friendly between these sides?
In D.C., too.
In Washington, D.C. They'll have the red, white, and blue colors. Be a wonderful place.
It'd be a great litmus test, too, for this. Again, we keep talking about the post-Sinclair era.
Happened to the Canadian men.
Yes, so too. But, to see where they ultimately stack up, and that Canada's always measuring itself against the U.S., so it'll be an interesting match.
Poor Leila Fernandez, she's out round 2 at Wimbledon. Felix and Gabriel Diallo go today. Victoria Mboko tomorrow. I think I saw a graphic like 12 or 13 of the 32 seeded men's players at Wimbledon are already out. So who knows? Maybe there's a pathway here for Felix or for Diallo, who's up to, where is he?
40th in the world.
In the ATP rankings to make a run. Whistler Golf Club poll question from Tuesday. We asked you, do you support the Canucks' decision to run it back with largely the same group of players? Yes or no? People said.
I think everybody's optimistic. They said yes.
Indeed. Percentage?
67.
66. Pretty good. Gullison, considering how the injury Reaper took more than its pound of flesh last year, yet we only finished 3 wins out of the playoff spot, signals this team is a top 15 team in the league when relatively healthy. I hear you, Gullison. we've got to inspire. We've got to aspire to more than top 15 at some point. Nick in Perth, longtime audience member. Shout out, Nick. The way the market shaped up, they were going to lose too much talent for nothing. Running it back was their best option to compete. Phil from New West says recipe for disaster. Donnie Brooks says no chance they compete with the West heavyweights. The new front office has failed miserably. Jabo says, I support management's decision to not get desperate and trade young assets for players that don't move the needle. They made offers they thought were fair, had the discipline to walk away when teams asked for more. Key point here, because we talked about that all last week. How much will they cave to desperation? And the answer is pretty much not at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Michael, I'd be more in favor if they took a swing on a baby Canuck moving up, like Electromakia, Carlson, Assassin, shed some of the bottom six salaries to help acquire that top two center. Yes, I hear you there as well. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. You'll have to forgive me. It's Canada Day. It's free agent frenzy. There's all this news swirling about Cam Robinson finished an answer on Connor Garland. I asked him immediately a question about Connor Garland.
We haven't done that in a while. I
saw Bowen Byram. What I thought was Bowen Byram news. I was like, oh, because the Canucks have been tied to him. Alas, no.
When we did 4 hours live on the radio, that would happen a little bit because they're constantly looking for the new information during a 4-hour radio show. Mm-hmm. We whittled that down. I'm proud of that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining the show, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. And a big hearty, we don't do a lot of this because Blake hates birthdays and anniversaries and things like that, but we did crack 10,000 YouTube subs yesterday. So thank you so much for that. Follow on all of our
Off to 20K now. Let's go!
Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky. Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific Time weekdays, and of course, support the community sponsors you hear us telling you about. I keep it local.